Hi, I'm James Barron. I'd like to invite everybody to enjoy our conversation today with Ghost of a Dream, Lauren Was, Adam Eckstrom. We've got a remarkable show at the gallery right now, which is called Without a King, Everybody Wants Some Heaven. Let's start with that title. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. We tend to fall in love with songs and let the lyrics of songs sometimes guide the way we're thinking about titling the work. And so this comes from a Love and Rockets song of a similar name. I think it's Everybody.
The name of the song is "Everybody Wants to Go to Heaven," but there's a refrain that where it repeats "Everybody wants some heaven" over and over, and it came from an opportunity we had in Italy where this organization, Art First, curated by Julia Drvanovic, asked us to come to Bologna and make a site-specific installation. And she brought us around to all these amazing historical sites. And we walked inside this oratorio of a church. The church is Santa Maria Della Vita in Bologna. And we fell in love with it immediately, and we wanted that to be where our installation happened. And so the long run, that's where we got to this Love and Rocket song as the title.
And all of our work is about people's hopes and dreams, and we make that out of the ephemera people collect trying to attain those hopes and dreams. And for us, being in a church, there was so many references about hope and about repetition, about ritual. And so we thought both the lottery and going to church was all about ritual. So this title made sense.
It's perfect for a church because the idea of faith seems to be really central in your work.
Yes, for sure. I mean, we all need faith, right? If we don't believe in something, anything, just we all cease.
And that idea of hope in something in an unknown future is important to all our pieces, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This possibility of something that may or may not happen, but keeping that hope that it will.
It's interesting because it's a universal dream. I mean, we think about the American dream of hope and making it big, but this is actually, by virtue of the fact that your lottery tickets are from all over the world, it expresses a world hope. Is that right?
Yeah, I think when we first began, we started thinking about these universal wants and desires. We started picking up these lottery tickets all over the streets in Brooklyn when we were living there in Queens, and we just kept thinking about what people were thinking about. I think in a later slide we sort of we'll show you that, but yeah, I think that this idea of hope, I don't know, transcends everything.
So what we're looking at in this first slide is the main wall in the gallery with this installation, which is so staggering. Why don't we move to the next slide? And maybe to back up a little bit, what happened was we included your work, Ghost of a Dream, in a show called Mosaics, curated by Deborah Goodman Davis. And Debbie is a friend, she's a brilliant curator. And I'd seen your work and it just seemed the perfect venue. And then we'd had this very strong reaction. We all decided that it would be very cool if we could have you recreate what happened in Santa Maria Della Vita in Bologna in whatever way you wanted, using the gallery as your playground. So that's in a way kind of the background for this current exhibition. Could you tell us about what we have here on the left on the slides?
We started our collaboration using lottery tickets and collecting ephemera about people's hopes and dreams, right? We started by taking our dog for a walk in Ridgewood and picking them up on the ground and just noticing what beautiful objects they are, right?
And when you look close, each one has a very specific way that people are scratching it out. So we kept thinking about that's those scratch marks as people's signature, and having this real they have almost this juju in them. They have this power because people have touched them and scratched them and really put their hopes into them. So then we started collecting from places like this.
Well, our projects got large immediately. Our first project was to make a Hummer, which is the most dreamt about and the most common thing bought when somebody wins the lottery, right? It's the number one thing people buy if they win a large amount in the lottery is a new car, and then a dream vacation, and then a home. And so the very first thing we did is built a Hummer H3 out of as many losing lottery tickets as it took to buy the car. And so we started having to go into places like Border, Bets and Butts, where all they did is sell cigarettes and lottery tickets, and ask them to collect them for us. And eventually they did. And then eventually they got sick of us. So we had to start raiding their dumpster. And below you see a lottery ticket sales place in Rome, and another one in the US. So it's kind of, this is showing, or, we went to Italy. We lived in Basel for some time shortly after the beginning of our collaboration. So we were collecting in France, Switzerland, and Germany. We were traveling to Italy, collecting them there.
Yeah, and then just realizing that it's universal, that everyone has this dream of like striking it rich quick. So that was sort of our intro into the lottery and collecting these tickets. I think you can do the next one.
In a way, it seems like it's based on the idea of a discontent with your current status in life and hoping that you could solve everything with kind of like a grand slam in the bottom of the ninth. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
we it seems like whatever your status, you think money will solve many of your problems,
And it
right?
usually doesn't.
It usually doesn't.
It's like the more you make, the more you spend.
Just to go back to Basel, I was just there last week. You were actually at the Byler Foundation, is that right? Can you tell us about that?
We had a residency with IABE, which is International Arts Atelier Basel, and they invite artists from around the world to do a 6-month residency, and they do an exchange with the US. It's with Galapagos. So Galapagos in Brooklyn accepts an artist for 6 months, and then IABE accepts an artist for 6 months. And the place they put the United States artist is on the grounds of the Foundation Byler, and it was amazing.
Spectacular. Because they close those gates at
By
6
the way,
o'clock.
That, by the way, is as close to heaven as you can get on this planet Earth, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, not just the museum itself, but the cows in the pasture, the whole setting. I biked there the last time I was there last week, and it was just incredible, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, we would bike that. We biked that path, every day, and from Rien to Basel, and it was a magical bike ride.
So this is baby Adam sitting in that studio at the
In Rien.
in Rien at the Foundation Bylar. And this is just like, we have piles and piles of lottery tickets, and we have to sort them out into different colors and start thinking about them as paint, like as palettes, so we have to sort them out.
We sort them out and treat them as if it's our painting palette.
Mm-hmm.
And that's our where we lived in Ridgewood, with walking our dog collecting tickets on the ground on the right.
So you see different colors that are used by different countries. And is there some method to it? Did you see, like in South American countries, they used brighter colors than they would in northern countries?
Not really.
No, they're all just designed to be like, wow, and just really get your attention. So
I will see a lot in Italy. There were a lot of red and green.
There was a lot of red and green in Italy, yeah. But yeah,
you brought up.
Sorry.
Lauren, you brought up this really interesting point, which I see in our exhibition, about how people scratch in such different ways. Some people are really thorough, and each square rectangle is completely emptied of the silver, foil on top. And some people, they kind of like quickly realize, oh, it didn't work out, and they've got like a couple strokes through it. I find that really interesting in relation to graffiti or scrawling in walls. Let's say in Rome, there's so much scrawling in the walls. It's really interesting, isn't it, to be able to identify people by their the urgency of their stroke. in
Totally.
striking off.
Yeah, and you can see, like, some people walk into the store and buy 30 of them or something, and then you can see how some people are know exactly where those numbers are underneath and won't waste a second of time, just knows exactly where, and just tick tick tick, get that little scratch off so they know where it is. And other people are like
I think that's about personality and
Yeah.
not necessarily, some people are very precise and some people are very random. Some people want to clear the whole thing to make sure. Some people really like the cleanliness.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
I
between
think it's
us in the
beautiful.
studio. It's like a great analogy between us, how we would scratch tickets very differently.
The two of you met at RISD, is that right?
We met at RISD, but then re-met, but we weren't very friendly at RISD.
That's not completely true,
Not
but
completely
I was
true.
in painting at RISD and Lauren was in sculpture. Lauren was a year ahead of me and we
Mhm.
were buddies. But we became romantic a year after being at RISD.
Totally. That's more
We were buddies, but
Yeah.
Lauren did, as a funny story, since Lauren said we weren't buddies, Lauren was in my studio and didn't want to get out when it was my year to take over her studio.
I didn't want to be evicted.
Could we see, is there anything you'd like to discuss with those slides? Otherwise, let's move to the
No,
next.
we're
Just keep going. This is again the studio in Rien, and this is on the wall in the back. You can see this is like we're using that back wall to create one of our I guess the third project in the lottery ticket series that we did, which was a dream home. So these are all panels made on cardboard to create like sort of this dining room situation.
And then on the right side, you see where we started to work with text, like
Yeah.
text coming off the wall. That was the first text work we made.
You can go on from here, I think.
Next.
So
Oh, so
then
there's
this is the
vehicle.
trio we were talking about. So,
This is the whole trilogy where we went car, vacation, home.
which is the top three things people want when they win the lottery.
And we built it with as I said before, the amount of money it would take to buy these things. The car, the Hummer, we used $38,000 worth. The Dream Vacation was $24,000. And we were like, yeah, this is just the dining room part, the interior of the dining room part. And so that was $70,000.
So we have
So you actually assign, even if it's just for your own purposes, a financial worth in how many of the lottery tickets you use to compose a composition.
For this series, this first trilogy, because the theory went full circle that we'd use that many lottery tickets for how much cost to buy the object, and then we would sell the object for that same amount of losing lottery tickets. Like that top left piece is in a museum in California. This piece on the right is in Alain Servet's collection in Brussels. And the bottom left is just in our art storage.
in our collection.
Probably paying that amount in a rental fee.
I mean, pieces of this are actually in other people's collections. This mirror above the buffet is in Stephanie and Gracia's collection. Several of the plates are in other people's collections.
Yeah,
Can you tell us about the portrait that's on that wall?
sure. That's a Hans Holbein the Younger, and that was made out of British lottery tickets because he was working in Basel at the time when we were there. And this picture was actually bought using money raised from the lottery by England's what's it called, National Heritage Foundation, which is that what it's called, National Lottery Heritage something. They use
for the national, they use those funds from the National Heritage Foundation to buy that painting for the National Gallery. And it was a big debate at the time when we were in Basel, which was 2009, about all this money from the lottery being spent on cultural things like this Holbein painting, or on the left side to repaint a church, which is the angel painting on the left, rather than for schools or plenty of other
roads
things. It could
or
be
all sorts of stuff. It seemed like it was sort of like taking money from one set of people and maybe gifting it to another set that when those two sets of people might
There's,
not,
yeah, a bit of disconnect.
yes.
Next slide.
Oh, that's just us. You can keep going.
The upper right one is a studio in our studio here where we're making a piece for the Mass Art Museum. We have a solo show right there that closes the end of July. So if anybody wants to see it, it's up for a few more weeks.
It's in Boston.
And it's made from 30 years of this museum that just opened in 2020. Used to be 2 galleries. They ripped it all apart for its Mass Arts galleries, and they ripped it all apart and made this beautiful museum. And so we were one of the first 3 exhibitions,
And they had all these catalogs that they, that had been part of the old galleries. And so we took those and cut them down and recreated this huge, or just made this huge installation using all the memories from the old galleries. So other people's art, repurposing it for our own. We've done a few pieces with artist postcards, and for us, it's sort of like the artist postcard is this thing that's like no longer used anymore so much, but it's, you have a show and you pass it along to as many people as you can, and then when it's over, it's just like this memory.
yeah, we see the artist postcard as the artist lottery ticket, right?
Mhm.
Like you think you're going to hand it to the right curator, and that's when your career takes off. And so we had a
One thing that appealed to me about the current show is that our gallery has a connection with Italy. I lived there from 2003 to 2014 with my family, still divide my time. So this concept of you recreating a show that was at Santa Maria Della Vita in Bologna here at the gallery, and using the gallery really as your playpen, your palette, really intrigued me. So could you lead us through this, starting with these 2 photos?
Yeah, so on the left is the image of the oratorio of Santa Maria Della Vita, as we saw it when we first came in, and we just, looking up, it's just completely gilded and beautiful and overwhelming. And then we saw this floor as sort of, it had sort of this trace of this gorgeous mosaic on the floor, but it was sort of faded. And so we thought we could bring back, the glory of this floor, and sort of play with that idea of the mirroring of what's happening above and below too. Go ahead.
Well, we fell in love with the pattern on the floor too, and we also wanted to bring attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
So by kind of repeating the mosaic on the floor with these lottery tickets to talk about the repetition of faith and hope, right? The repetition in playing the lottery, and the repetition of,
showing up to Mass every Friday night or something like that.
Yeah, was kind of repeated again by us taking this repetition of this floor that's faded, and then bringing it and bringing light to it, and bringing all the attention from above, from this Lombardi back down to the floor.
Mm-hmm. And so go ahead.
I was going to say there's an interesting element to mosaics themselves, because the mosaics are composed of past dreams, churches which have been disassembled, where they've, decided they didn't like this style or that, and they take the marble or the stone material, they fracture it some more, and they put it into the fabric of the floor. So that also kind of plays in with your idea about discarded dreams.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. Completely.
So on the right, could you explain to everybody about what the supports are and the central element, especially, that are holding the panels above the floor?
Maybe Maria can go to the next slide that has more of an overview.
Right.
Yes.
There we go.
So we sort of set up three stations almost. There's 3 big masses of the collages, and holding up the panels are these cups from a casino that's called Lady Luck. And to us, this played into this idea of the Virgin Mary, and she's sort of being the support of these panels.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and the three stations were just about, the three stations of in the Catholic religion, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. So we thought it was a good like mirroring, having that.
Mhm. And we're literally just like the shapes that you see are the shapes that are on the floor. So we're just sort of raising that up so you can see both at the same time. You have this sort of play between levitation and groundedness.
And this piece in the top of the screen, which is the center of the room, kind of the center of the center station, is the largest piece that's in the gallery, hanging as a diamond. Which was
How did you decide to hang it as a diamond as opposed to being a square?
just so much more dynamic.
Yeah, it felt
Really.
like it really, it felt very different. I mean, I think we played with it both ways when we were at the gallery, and then seeing it as a diamond really felt like it just like breathe, right? Breathe. I can't say the word right now. They like gave new life to it, or like.
It
yeah.
also works like whenever we're installing, like this was incredible. We made this site specific, but when we brought it to the gallery, we wanted to install it site specific in your space, right? And so we moved everything around, and we wanted to really work with the architecture. And I think right now it works with the pitch of the roof. It works with the scale of the wall. It really fills the space. It makes it more dynamic. I feel like more energy comes out of a diamond when you're just looking at it. Your eyes shoot off to the left and right, up and down. In our work, we like to look, which we'll talk about this soon, but it's a good, or later, but it's a good sequitur. Often when we're working with collage, we're looking at as many things as possible. So when one enters a room, it could reference so many things. And almost in almost every culture, there's a diamond and a rectangle or a square, and those two things are interacting, right? And so diamonds are really important to our practice.
But if a collector or a museum were to buy it, would they have the option of hanging it as a square instead of a diamond?
Lauren? Yes.
Yeah, I think.
In
so.
fact,
I think it's signed as a square right now.
it is
so.
signed as a square. And from the previous exhibition, a collector had bought a diamond from the show, and is currently hanging as a square, and it looks fantastic. And it works great too, because those diamonds are in two pieces. They're hung separated by a couple inches, and when it hangs as a square, it still has that angled line, that 45-degree line that brings your eyes and shoots it out.
Yeah,
Next
I mean, going into the gallery and being able to play with those spaces was so fun. Play with the pieces were so fun for us, because we'd never really put things together. Like, I mean, it was like a puzzle, and we got to put things together and tear it apart, and we didn't actually know what it was all going to look like, because we had all these building blocks, and we were able to
reconfigure them.
Mm-hmm.
We had this puzzle that fit the oratorio, exact, and it could not be done another way. So it was nice to take this puzzle and reconfigure it kind of the same way we do, just with little pieces of paper.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I noticed during the installation is the high percentage of time that the two of you agree on something, which is really interesting, because you are also a couple. You are artists. You both have unique views and vantage points, but it seemed like the strike rate was way above 99% to me. Congratulations on that. It's kind of amazing.
Well, you saw us on a good day. No, I mean, I think that we have a similar vision, and we know what looks good, and we also know when to give up a fight.
Yeah.
For
Do
the
you
most part.
find in the studio, do you propel each other forward? Like,
Sure.
Adam, you look at an idea that Lauren's working with, you say, I think you could really do this. And then Lauren looks at it and says, look, let's move it here again. And then you both kind of arrive at a solution. Does that happen?
We definitely, we have to fight for our ideas, right? Like, which is great. Couples are the most honest people with one another than any other relationship, right? Brutally honest. And that makes the work stronger. Like if an idea is not good, if my idea is not good, Lauren's going to let me know, and if you just had a friend in the studio visiting, trying to talk about your work, they might not be that honest, but Lauren's like, gotta be honest. Number one, we're married, but number two, it's like her work just as much as mine, and the same vice versa. So we have to fight an idea out till it becomes a good idea.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of respect that comes from working together, because we have very, very different methods of working and ways of thinking about composition and how to put material together. So I've learned so much from Adam, and I think he's learned a couple things from me.
Definitely.
So I think that's like really, yeah, it's really guided us. And we also let each other play it out. So like we'll hang some, I don't know if like we laid a few things out and just sort of sat with it, and then one of us would say, nope, we got to try it another way, and we did it, and then sometimes it wasn't good and we put it back the way we had it, so.
Next slide, please.
No, there's a scent. That's the
There you
one
see-
on the big wall.
Yeah, I mean, it really works as a diamond. Let's look at the next slide, please.
So there you can see some of the scratching, especially on the left slide, the power fives, like the different methods of how people scratch. But to us, like seeing it in person and seeing just how each thing goes together, we're cutting I think what a lot of people don't realize is that we're cutting each ticket down some. We have to get rid of edges, and we're really thinking about how each ticket is sort of creates its own line, and how there's so many different lines in a ticket.
Yeah, so we have depending on what we cut and what we leave, we're kind of choosing how our paintbrush stroke works, right? Sometimes it's a centimeter wide, sometimes it's 3 inches wide.
Mm-hmm.
Next, please.
This piece was the four corners of the church. Each corner of the oratorio had this piece that was, like a meter at its longest, and just a little triangle in the corner. So it was so fun to bring this to your gallery and take the furthest reach of the whole piece and bring the four corners and like aim them at one another.
Mm-hmm. And it's, I don't know, somehow it's very simple, but it's my favorite piece because it does some great things with your eyes as you're standing there. It sort of tunnels everything in, and then at the same time propels your eyes out. So a lot of the work that we're working on now sort of does that play with like what is happening with your eyes when you're looking at the work. And this, I think, is fun to see come together like that.
The title, The Critic with a Grudge. So all the lines, all the titles of the work in the show come from Everybody Wants to Go to Heaven, the song by Love and Rockets. So there's like kind of a list of all these couples.
Mm-hmm.
And The Critic with a Grudge is one of my favorite lines too.
Next, please.
That's a great image.
Scale, just
the largest
one being
smallest.
sort of a domestic scale and the other being really expansive. It's fabulous. The negative space is really interesting when it's divided in four, because it does become something of a cross as well.
Mm-hmm. Or bullseye, or yeah.
Next, please.
So these are like, I think we're getting into our inspiration pattern. So this is all from a church in Siena. We're always looking, not always at churches, but we're always looking at like how different people and different cultures are using these patterns and able to create line and geometry out of something else.
And the idea being to not just be looking at one thing. We want as many people as possible to come in the room and feel some familiarity. It might remind somebody of the mosque they go to, or their grandma's quilt, or their tile work in their kitchen, or their prayer rug, or,
Yeah.
you know,
So here we have a Danae patterned textile prayer rug from Central Anatolia, and is an Islamic, I think it's an Islamic tile. And so we're thinking about all these things and hopefully pulling some of these patterns from each of them. So there's no like, we've just had so many people talk about how it's like can work between all these different cultures.
yeah, it's nice when people come to an exhibition, they're like, oh, this reminded me of, my grandma's home, or this reminded me of this place when I grew up. It's just that's a little bit of familiarity helps people draw it further into the work. And with all our work, we like it to be attractive from a distance with a pattern, right? Then to bring you into the work, and so you have this familiarity, but you also like delve deeper into the work. You look closer to figure out what all these large lines are, and you start to see their pieces of paper, and then you draw closer and you see these signatures, if it's that, if it's the scratch cards, or and it slowly unfolds what the material is, and then hopefully it slowly unfolds conversations in your head, whatever your thoughts about the material might be.
And we're always collecting. We have like so many different ways of collaging. We're collaging with video, and we're collaging with text and photographs, and yeah, anything you can think of that's sort of like people have dreamed about. We're trying to gain collections and make new work, and the work always looks different because we're using these very different materials. But we started off with lottery tickets, and they just have such texture and great color. So it's fun to come back to it.
Titles are fabulous. I love this, The Prophet and the Fool.
Yeah.
Again, that negative space with the vertical line. Really an interesting decision to keep the division.
Well, what led to the decision to keep the division? Two things. One was that we made them so they were on like opposite sides of the installation, so they weren't made to fit totally together ever, right?
Yeah, just like that small 4 triangle diamond. The same. Many of these diamonds were opposite one another around that central piece.
So one, practicality wise, they don't fit totally together, but I think that we've done this in several different pieces, even before this, where we love that idea of negative space and what happens in between it, and sort of that push-pull, because it just doesn't become one image, it becomes about this like tension between, I don't know.
And we should note you've got the cups as sort of an ad hoc sculpture in the corner on the floor.
Yeah, I like that. It sort of disrupts the, I don't know, the cleanness of the space.
It makes it a little less sterile.
Yeah.
Right.
But
it's a great nod to the installation.
Yeah.
And I like it as its own sculpture.
I think they're fun, but.
Next slide, please.
And this is a total, this was really fun to do. We didn't really know if it would work and if these pieces would fit together and how we would install it, because it wasn't necessarily built. It wasn't built to do this at all. But we had these 8 pieces and we wanted to put them together.
And there were several ways to configure it, but and this is what we maybe played with and disagreed with the most, and then we both came to this and loved this solution, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gorgeous solution.
Yeah,
it's interesting because it takes up roughly the same amount of wall space as the large piece on the central wall, and yet it's so different because it really is a collage. I mean, it's collaged elements, but then you've created a new collage, putting the 8 pieces together.
Yeah, for sure.
Next slide, please.
Yeah, and then we had these, and that was really fun to sort of move through the gallery with these same shapes and make smaller little individual pieces.
Yeah, the installation had 16 of these parallelograms, right? So we thought it'd be really nice to take 8 to make one piece, you know, 2 equal parts. So this equal part of these 8 to make a piece and the other 8 to break up.
Sort of scatter or shatter throughout the
yeah.
space.
Next.
It's a nice scale photo, like the scale to see what two of the works from the 8, you know, like just what that difference is and how much it changes. Like the way those two are together is a very different, it's a different angle, you know, they're not put together like the ones from the 8 on the right.
Next, please.
I like this where it goes, which I believe is in the next slide. And the prisoner and the judge. I love that title.
Yeah.
How do you
So
come up with that title? It's kind of an amazing.
that's again from the Love and Rockets song.
Okay.
You can only take partial, you know.
Yeah, we can't take credit for that. We can only take credit for loving Live on Rocket and knowing about the song.
But to me, I love the installation of this, and this was definitely Adam's idea.
I had to fight for this one.
And I thought that it was sort of overkill, and I thought it was going to be sort of silly above the window, but the colors of the green get pulled out within the scenery, and it becomes like 2 more windows or something. And I think that that's really powerful the way it's installed.
Yeah, the installation process was incredible just to watch the two of you making decisions about how it would fit together. So next, please.
Yeah, that's our last little arrow rocket.
The negatives. I was excited about the negative space in this one.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
It does have sort of an upward movement, which is interesting because it's got angel in the title.
Yeah. And so
So
this
here-
is from a different series.
Oh, were you going to say something about this first, James?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So this is a piece made out of all trophies that have been discarded. You know, these trophies to us are this thing that you really strive for, and you want, you know, your whole life. You're like trying to get the next thing. You're trying to get validation for the thing that you're doing, and then they sort of end up as these objects that are forgotten. And so we wanted to bring this piece into the show to sort of just give one slightly different angle of what the dreams are that we're working with. And I don't know.
And so what it is first is it's all these trophy risers, right? Holding these 2 mirrors apart from one another. And so we took these 2 mirrors we found, used mirrors. We took out the glass. We have a bunch of trophy risers at the exact same height. And then we took the eagles that are on almost any trophy. You see a group of trophies, there's going to be an eagle on it, which is crazy. But we use the rods to just kind of sandwich together the 2 mirrors. There's no other hardware, you know, there's a little pad to soften it, but it's just the trophy hardware holding itself together. And then if you go in front of it, you see just this infinity, and you can stand on both sides of it and see an infinity rather than directly through it. And then inside we have a light made out of 5 kind of risers, cups that also come from trophies, kind of like Olympic cups. And then that's like wrapped with trophy ribbons. And it's all about this validation. And once you have this validation and you move on, that validation becomes worthless and becomes what your parents put on the curb when you move out of the house to get rid of.
And funnily, this title comes from the Bette Midler song, "Wind Beneath My Wings," which you know, once I hear that, I'm like, can't stop singing it. But we thought that would be a funny little gesture.
I think there's something slightly different about this piece. I mean, although it's discarded objects, people work really hard to make an achievement. then they're given an award for that achievement. But then the next generation or the one after that has absolutely no use for it. They've lost the nostalgia for that achievement, and it hits the sidewalk, and then someone like the two of you picks it up and turns it into something else. But there is an achievement involved with this, as opposed to trying to get a free ride to heaven with lottery tickets.
It's a little bit of a flip on that, right?
It is.
It's also about our desire. I feel like to me, this piece is about our desire, like our insatiable desire to keep doing more. Where you sort of like, there's never an end to the goals that you want to reach. You know, it's sort of always stretching out in front of you, and there's no, you just have to keep going forward.
Next, please.
So now I think we're going into a few of our other installations, just to sort of give you an idea of what else we're making. So this was the installation at Mass Art Museum in Boston that we were talking about earlier. That's made out of all the catalogs from the 30-year history of the galleries that were there before. And these pieces are always funny because, like, as artists come through, they recognize some of their work within the collages. It's like always this like tension of
Yeah, I mean, some artists love it. Other artists are like, why is my image in there?
yeah. But this is all cut from different catalogs. So we never print,
We never, to make a collage, we won't print a bunch of something and then collage it. It's important that there was like an energy in the actual object.
yeah.
I
So
think
while
that's what you're-
I guess so while it looks like one continuous surface, these are all teeny bits of collage.
Next, please.
And this is a piece that is a permanent installation at KKR in the 40s. I don't remember what floor.
52nd floor.
A high floor in the World Trade Center, but they asked us to create an installation. KKR is an investment firm, and this particular floor of the World Trade Center is their innovation division. And so they asked us to come in and make an installation. And so we looked at the whole floor and we made this piece that continues all the way around the floor, which is a full city block, using paint, right? So there's a paint line with collage intermixing with the paint that kind of does the whole circumference of the building.
And this one, you see that we also separated this collage, and then we're painting in that separation. So we sort of continue the line. It becomes this real push-pull between paint and like the three-dimensional panel.
Next.
And this is just more shots of the collage sort of making its way through the different sections of this office
What's the
building.
reaction been with the employees of the firm? Do they enjoy living with this work?
I mean, all the responses we got were pretty impressive. Like, people were, we haven't been back since the installation weeks, but we were there actually as people were moving in, right? Like, we were moving in and they were moving in.
I was like painting while somebody was sitting at that desk, right?
Yeah, like
Odd.
literally standing on their desks painting while
Yeah.
they were also moving in. But everybody was so happy and excited about it. And
the art advisor we worked with said that other divisions of this firm were very jealous about the art that was there and wanted similar art at their offices. So good reactions.
Next, please.
And this is a project we've been working on since the beginning of 2020, where we've asked in the beginning of 2020, we were putting a bunch of images together, photographic images together for various reasons. And we decided we wanted to make what to us would be the most inclusive project possible. So we decided we were going to make a 24-hour piece where we asked an artist in every nation in the world. At that time, we used the rubric of UN member states to shoot a video of the sunset for 7 minutes. So we've now completed the goal of having an artist who has been generous enough to shoot a film of the sun at the end of the day for 7 minutes. So we're currently editing a 24-hour film that will be continuous following the globe. This is where installation where we took stills of those videos and connected them via the horizon line, and it goes around the whole departure hall in Penn Station. Unfortunately, it was up for a while. Unfortunately, it just went down.
Unfortunately, it had a 3-month run.
Yeah.
Our time was up.
Unfortunately, we can't see it for a little long.
But it was kind of fun because this, being in Penn Station is like the armpit of New York, but we all sort of end up going through there at some point. And it was really interesting to be in that space and bring images from every country in the world down there, to as New Yorkers, we always feel like we're in the center of the universe. And, and so this piece was like bringing New York to the center. You're standing in the center and you're looking at the whole world all around you.
And being in Penn Station, you theoretically can get anywhere in the world from there, right? This is this hub. You take the train to the plane and you can get to any of these places from this spot.
Yeah.
The conceptual element in your work is really interesting, how you address a particular site and you're trying to bring a different notion of time or vantage point. Looks like a really amazing project.
Thank you.
So here we are back at the gallery, and
Right.
There is something interesting after looking at those suns, that this kind of mandala shape, it seems to have this infinity, as though it could be a sunrise or it could be a sunset. It's intriguing to see your work with nature right out the windows, as opposed to, let's say, the World Trade Center, where you're looking at this, huge mass of squares and rectangles of buildings. Does it intrigue you to see the work? Now you've seen the same work in a church, which felt kind of closed off, and here with the windows that open up. Can you talk about that a bit?
I think seeing it on the wall is, it's really nice. You just get a better sense of scale. You get a better sense of the color and everything. We were thinking we wanted to try to put a couple pieces on the floor in the gallery because it's such a beautiful space and so open. And we laid it all out and we looked at it and it just didn't have the same vibrancy.
Yeah, it fell flat. It literally fell flat. Like it just didn't work on the floor anymore without the church. It needed to be on the wall. And here it works great with the windows. It looks itself like a repeating window, right? Especially this large piece. And we were talking before, like the power of those two parallelograms right on top of the two, like sliding doors.
Yeah.
Is there a spiritual aspect to your work when you look at it?
For us?
Sure, but it's kind of our
it's our
existence,
church.
right? Like it's complete, like we live together, we have a child together, we're married, and we make this practice together. It's like completely spiritual. In fact, Lauren's brother's a priest, and he's the one who performed our ceremony, who married us, and he talked about in marrying us, he talked about our religion being our religion being
our church being, but I don't know.
I forgot he had a great analogy, but he speaks better than we do. We're artists, he's a speaker.
But I don't know. I
don't think of it that way, but I'm just trying to riff off this great question.
I think that there's magic in art. So maybe it's more about magic. There's magic in the way things can get transformed, and you can see little things and big things all at once when you're looking at artwork, even when it's a painting and you're focusing in on one brush stroke versus the whole thing. And there's these huge flips that can happen. And for us, it's about like the power of communicating ideas and thoughts and how we feel about the world. So,
And how we do that like most effectively and complexly at the same time.
mhm.
I'm wondering if any of the viewers have questions. If they do, they could actually do a chat to Maria, and we could further the question on to both of you. Tell me what's next with the two of you with your work.
We have a couple things we're working on. We're working on this video project, right? And now we have 225 participants because in looking at nationhood, we realized it was a little short-sighted just to be looking at the UN member states, right? And so nationhood's huge. There's in the United States, there's over 600 nations, right? There's many places like Crimea, Somaliland, Northern Ireland. So we've been reaching out to more nations, getting more participants, and we see this as an endless project. But so we're working on this 24-hour film. We're working on an installation where it's being projected, kind of a spinning projection that's going to show at Museum of Contemporary Art in Arlington next winter.
Mocha.
Arlington. And we have some other shows already.
We are in a group show at VSOP right now in
Long Island.
Long Island, and yeah, I think
It must be very interesting to have an initial idea and then decide if it's going to be expressed through the video or through collage or through, do you ever go back to painting? Adam, you mentioned you were painting and Lauren was sculpture at RISD. Do you ever go back to what you were specifically doing when you were in school?
Not specifically. I definitely use those skills. Like a few years ago, we started collecting art fair memorabilia, and then one of which was the carpets and the crate pieces, right? And we made a kind of a whole tiny home out of it, and then we took a lot of that carpet and made paintings from the carpet that is in most art fairs, or at least it used to be.
Yeah, you really led the research on the KKR piece at the World Trade Center of like how
to paint that wall,
how to paint those walls and the taping, and I sort of guided the colors and other things. But
I want to point out art fairs, which are sort of maligned by the press, is seen as a place where it's not ideal lighting, it's not ideal walls, and et cetera, et cetera. Your project was sent in Santa Maria Della Vita came out of you showing at the Volta Fair. Am I right?
Correct.
Mhm.
Correct.
So I love that idea, this kind of circular pattern that it starts at an art fair, it's transformed into a church in Bologna. Then it comes back to an art gallery that's 15 minutes away from your home, but it keeps getting transformed. It goes onto the floor as a riff on mosaics. It comes into a mosaic show in our gallery that is transformed into something much grander, using the space as your playground. I love that idea that it was initiated in an art fair. There's a lot of currency that happens in fairs, don't you think?
For sure. We talk about it a lot as
It's like the best and the worst place to see art.
yeah, it's a great place to see a lot of work, right? To get a real survey of a lot of work. You don't necessarily see one art where you don't have the art experience like you do walking into your gallery, right? But you make connections. You see a lot of work, you connect with people, so many great things come out of it. It pays our bills, all the great things come out of it. It also is, you can't go to an art fair and expect to have a singular, you can't have the art experience, right? Like you can't really take in an installation.
And you miss so much too. Yeah. And it's terrible.
So I'd like to think that the germ of this show, the genesis, came out of Volta with the curator looking at your work. Then it moves into a place that's created for spiritual practice, a religious center in Bologna. comes back to, in a sense, our gallery, which is really based on the idea of having an aesthetic experience that might be the religion or the spiritual practice of most of the people who come here. That, you know, aesthetics is really the transporting thing. So unless you have anything else to close with, I thought that seems like sort of a beautiful closing to what started in an art fair in 2010. And I'd like to thank both of you for this incredible installation you've done, the experience of being able to watch the two of you collage together, make something new out of something that you created in Italy. And thank you and continued good luck with everything you do with your work.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us make this installation in the gallery. We really appreciate this experience and this opportunity too.
Mhm.
It's a complete joy. Thank you both.
Bye.
Right.
Bye.